Hey everyone, I wanted to make a video teaching you how to cover Story 2 by clipping on the OPZ. Unfortunately, all the other takes were way too long, so I'm going to split this into two parts. The first part, I'm going to go over the synth part, and then the second part is going to be completely about adding the drums and stuff. So I'm going to go through how to set up your OPZ with stock sounds to match the tutorial I did, or the cover that I did before. And then I'll talk about, adding the notes and all that. And we're actually going to have to split this between two projects because of some rhythmic changes. So we're going to get all of that set up in this video, and we're going to add all of the synth notes. And then in the next video is when I'll add in some of the drums. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to first start off by changing our tempo by holding down the metronome button. And this first project is going to be 110. So I type in 1 and 1 and 0. Then I'm going to turn this fourth encoder all the way counterclockwise, so that way our metronome is completely off. Next, I'm going to go ahead and load up our synth engines. I'm going to start with the ARP track, and that's because this is where the bass line is going, because it's a lot easier to work with triplets and other such things on the bass track, and it's got a little bit more polyphony. So I'm going to do a few things here. I'm going to load up the Uranus plug, and then I'm going to go ahead and change to parameter page 3 and turn off the arpeggiator by moving this first encoder all the way counterclockwise. Then I'm going to hold down track, and I'm going to move this second encoder clockwise until the value key 2 lights up. And that's because I want this track to be mono. So we've got our ARP track ready to go. There's also going to be some notes on the chords track. The chords track is going to use the bow engine, and this is going to replace a sample sound in the original song. We're going to make it kind of like a blips type sound, if that makes any sense. The last track I'm going to change for the synths is the lead track, and this is going to represent a pad that comes in about a third of the way through the song. So I have loaded up the analog engine for that, and now we have our synth tracks ready to go. Next up, I want to change the FX1, FX2, and master control tracks. So for FX1, I'm going to make it delay, which it is by default, but I'm going to make the delay really short because I kind of want to use this as a reverb in a way. Then I'm going to move to the second effects track, and I'm going to change this to being the distortion plug. And that's because I'm going to use this to have that bass line stand out and just sound a little bit louder as the song goes on. Lastly, I'll move to the master track, where I'm going to change the second encoder, drive, and I'm just going to put it all the way up. And that's just kind of my own habit. Speaking of my own habits, I just remembered there's something really weird with the presets that I've done intentionally that you won't have to deal with probably. And that is changing the pan to the middle on all of the synth tracks. And while I'm doing this, I'm also going to increase the volume for all of them because that one is just a habit for me. So now we've got all of these set up, and we are ready to start adding in our notes for the synth tracks. I got all of the notes for this by reading a bass tab on Ultimate Guitar that I've linked below. If you don't play bass or guitar, you can still read tabs and you can figure out what the notes are, and it's pretty simple. So I'll just show you the very first note, and then I'll just tell you what the rest of the notes are, don't worry. So if you look at these first 3 notes on this ARP track or in our bass line, you'll see that there's this 4. And if you look at the 4 that comes first, it is on a row that has a D. That's saying that this is the 4th fret on the D string. If you were to play the D string open, it would mean that the numeral was a 0 instead of 4, and it would be the note D. Each fret that you add increases it by a semitone. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So F sharp is that very first note. We're doing a bass line, so I'm going to decrease this by 2 octaves by hitting minus twice. And here I'm just going to add in our first note, which is F sharp. And then spoiler for the others, they are D and C sharp. But this isn't going to be what I want. That's not the sound I'm going for. So I'm going to hold down track and shift, and I'm going to change this step length to 2 and the step count to 3. The first 2 parts are basically identical, so I'm going to go ahead and just copy this twice more. So that way we can go to this third part and we can change that. Really quickly, I just realized I made a mistake. So let me go back to the beginning and let me add in our sort of blippy sound from that chords track. And it's a little bit tricky to do it with this engine, with the bow engine. So you're going to want to remove all the release, make sure the attack is sharp. And that actually might be good. Let's see. I'm going to make our step count 6, but our step length is 1. It's not quite what we want, so I'm actually going to add a step component here, and I'm going to add a multiply 9, and that's going to make this a broken chord, which is just going to kind of offset those two notes, so it won't be a chord anymore. It's a bit more like that blippy sound. I'm going to increase it by an octave by holding shift and hitting plus. And that's a bit loud, so I'm going to go to the 4th page and turn down the volume a bit, maybe filter it out a bit. Okay, so those are going to be, I'm now going to copy that to the first 3 patterns. So I'm going to go to the 3rd pattern now, and I'm going to increase the step count of the chords track to 8, and I'm going to increase the step count of the ARP track to 4. If we look at our tab for the 4/8 section, which is where we're at now, it's the first 3 the same. The first 3 notes are the same, and then the last note is an F sharp. So I'm going to hold down record. I'm going to hit plus a few times to get here. I'm going to enter in that low F sharp. I'm going to now copy this pattern over here, and we're going to move to our 5/8 section. So I'm going to go to the chords track, make this 10 steps. The ARP track is going to be 5 steps. Things change a little bit more here, so I'm actually going to remove this 4th note because only the first 3 are the same as the last part. And I'm going to move here, and I'm going to add in an A and an F sharp. Let's copy this into our 6/8 section. I'm going to change the ARP track to being a step count of 6 and the chords track to being step count 12. We're going to go back to the ARP track, and because it adds a note on this 3rd step, I'm just going to be kind of lazy and just only keep those first 2. So we have our F sharp and we have our D. The next notes we have are going to be E, C sharp, A, and F sharp. Okay, so let's copy this over to our 7/8 section, and I'm going to change this to being step count 7, and this to being step count 14. And our notes here are going to be mostly the same, at least for the first 4. So let's go ahead and add in a B, A, F sharp. And let me double check that. Yep, okay, I already set that. And so then I'm going to add in the 8/8-4/4 section or whatever now, which is going to just have all those steps and the first 8 steps of this track. So let's go ahead and see what that pattern actually is. It's going to start off and be mostly the same. The only difference is the last 2 notes. So I'm going to erase this F sharp. And I'm going to add in a C sharp and then an F sharp. For this last section, it's going to be a bit hectic. Just for consistency's sake, I'm going to copy this over. But I'm going to completely delete all the triggers on the ARP track by holding down track and stop. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the 3rd parameter page, and I'm going to change this to being 3. So we're going to be working with triplets. I'm then going to add in our triplets on every other step, and there's going to be 4 sets of them. So the first set is going to be F sharp, D, and E. And I want to extend this to take up 2 steps. The next part is going to be C sharp, A, and B. That's going to take 2 steps. I'm going to hold it down to copy it here because it repeats. Then here we have A, and then we have B, and then F sharp. And that's going to take up 2 steps as well. So if I did this right, it should sound kind of like the original with a bunch of triplets here. Cool. So I believe I did that right. Now let's move to the second pattern, or the second project, and then we're going to come back and add in the pad. But for right now, let's just keep this as it is with the chords track and the ARP track being all that we have. So I'm moving to pattern 10. I'm going to go to tempo, and I'm going to turn off the metronome just like before, and I'm going to set the tempo to 165. And that's because we're going to be, what this song basically does, and you could watch Yogev's video if you if you actually want a good explanation, but it basically takes those triplets and then kind of reassigns them as quarter notes, or maybe eighth notes. I don't remember. Either way, you end up with the second section that's just easier to sequence at a rate of 1.5 the original. So 110 times 1.5, 165. Okay, so for this part, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of trial and error, and I'll record it along the way, because we want to keep this relatively short, since we're going to start off with a 4/4 section, then move to 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and then 8/4. And what that is going to require us to do is like have some strategy to fit all those notes in this limited space. So I'm going to put 4 notes on a step at a time, and then I'm just going to try to figure out which step count and ARP values to use to like kind of dial that in. Let's go ahead and actually get those notes in. So on this first step, I'm going to go F sharp, D, E, and then I'm going to do C sharp. And I'm going to have this last that long. I'm going to have the step count 4. I'm going to change this to 2. So that, I believe, is the right pace. So we've got step length of 4, and we've got the ARP speed set to 2. So I'm going to enter in the next 3 sets of 4 notes, and that's going to be, let's see, this is A, B, C sharp, A. The nice part about the ARP track is that you can repeat those steps. I just extended this to make sure it takes up 2 steps, which is what you want. For the third one, I'm going to go ahead and do D, A, B, C sharp. And then for here, I'm going to do B, A, B, and what is that? F sharp, G sharp. Okay. Going to make sure that these are all the right length. Okay. And now I'm going to change the step count to just being 8. Okay, so let's copy this over here. And now I'm going to change this to being 10 steps instead of 8. And, you know, of course, this has to be complicated. It's different every time. So let's just get through this. I'm going to, on this first step, I'm going to go with F sharp, D. Oh, wait, sorry. I was looking at the wrong row again. Okay, I'm going to go F sharp, A, that's up here, D, and then E. For this next part, I'm going to do C sharp, A, B, C sharp. For this third step here, or this third trigger, I'm going to do A, B, D, C sharp. Fourth one, I'm going to do A, B, C sharp, B. And then for this fifth one, I'm going to do C sharp, A, B, F sharp. So let's move on to the next set then. This one is going to take up 12 because we're now in 6/4. And the first, thankfully, this first one is the same between the two. I don't think the rest of them are, so let's just remove those. And I'm going to go ahead and enter in this part, which is going to be, let's see, it's going to be F sharp. Oh, wait, that's the first part again. F sharp, C sharp, A, B. Then this one is going to be C sharp, D, A, B. This one is going to be D, C sharp, A, B, followed by C sharp, D, A, B. Didn't I just say that? So that one's actually, sorry, C sharp, D, B, C sharp. And then this last one is going to start off on this G sharp again, and we're going to go G sharp, A, B, F sharp. Okay, let's move on to the 7/4 part. For the 7/4 part, let's go through all of these steps. So I've got F sharp, A, G sharp, D. And then I've got, let's see, E, F sharp, C sharp, D. Here I have B, C sharp, E, D. Here I have A, B, D, C sharp. Oops, I put that in the wrong spot though, so I'm gonna, move that over there. So that's A, B, C sharp, and D. We're gonna do I realized I did this wrong. So A, B, D, C sharp, A, B, C sharp, D. And then we're going to move on to, let's see, what is this? A, B, C sharp, and then G sharp. And then here, for our last one, we have A, B, C sharp, F sharp. So for this last section, I'm going to make a few changes. I'm going to change the ARP speed to being 4. I'm going to change our step count to being 16. And then I'm going to start, I went up an octave, and now I'm going to start adding in some of those notes. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So we've got G, D, C sharp, and A. Okay, and so then the next cluster of 4 is going to be, I'm actually going to have to go down an octave, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go G, F sharp, D, D, and then C sharp. That's going to also take up 2 steps. For the third step, we have A, C sharp, D, and then, oh gosh, so that would be F sharp. Oh geez, this is hard to do when it's an octave up like this. So that is the second to last step, and then for our last step, I'm going to do G, A, C sharp, and D. And let's see if this sounds anything like the original song. Okay, sounds pretty good. I'm going to increase this an octave. Okay, so it seems like we've got our notes in. So what we need to do now is go back, and there's 2 things we got to take care of. One is going to be the actual duration of each of these patterns, and the next one is going to be the pad in the background. So for the duration of these patterns, I'm going to use the master track. And I'm going to set the master track step length to 8. And I'm going to make the step count just 3 on this part. Because it's going to just repeat that 3 times. And I'm just going to copy the master track to all the rest of these, and then we'll just adjust the count instead of always having to adjust the length. So we're going to adjust, the count here is already, or is going to be 6, because it's going to take up 8 bars of that 3/8 pattern. The count here is going to be 8. The count here is 10. The count here is 12. Count here is 14. And then for these last 2, it's just going to be 8 bars of, I just put it with all the steps. How about that? And so what we have here is I'm just going to show the first 3. So it repeats 4 times, now it repeats 8. Okay, so that seems like it's working just fine. So we have that set up for the first part of the pattern. Now let's go and make sure that we've got it set up for that second part of the pattern. And so this is a bit trickier. I think it only repeats them twice. So we have, but it's a lot longer because it's just taking up more notes. So this one, we could just make it, let's actually do it. What would be the easiest way of doing this? I'm going to make it 8 again, and let's see if I can make some sense of this. Okay, cool. So that's a start. So I'm going to copy that master track to these others. This one, let's just try it at 10. Cool, that looks right. 12, 14, and then there. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in our pads. Okay, so let's go to the 7/4 part. So we've got 3/8, 3/8, 4, 5, 6, 7/8. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in, we're going to have to play with the sound a bit, but I'm just going to add in this octave where I've got both A's, and I'm going to make it so it just takes up the whole time. Oh wait, I can't do that. I got to make it the same length. And what I can do is I can exaggerate the attack to make it fade in more. And let's just add a bit of modulation maybe on the filter. Okay, so I just re-listened to it and I was wrong. It starts off with A for the first half, and then it's B for the second half. And I'm gonna take off that attack. So you know what, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the release on this so I don't deal with that more. And just in anticipation, I'm going to turn off the release of this as well. Okay, so the only other place I believe that the pad actually appears is going to be in the right near the very end. And I think that, I think it might just be the same sort of the same notes. I could be wrong. And then the last part, there's like kind of a dramatic chord progression, but I'm just going to substitute that with the exact same thing that we have here. Why not? Cool. So all I did there is I changed the step count to being 14 on that track. So I think this is basically the whole song. I'm going to make, I'm just going to make a pattern chain here. Okay, so I just tried to do a playthrough and I noticed a couple of errors that I actually made. So one of them is going to, and I think they're both related to the pads. So one is that this one should last the whole way. And then, let's see, what else is there? Cool, so I think I've now fixed it, so let's actually do a playthrough. So I've created a pattern chain here that just plays all these in a row, and then while this pattern's playing, I'm gonna queue up the next project, and then I'm gonna have to create a like pattern chain on the fly. Okay, so like I said, still need more effects to be added onto this, still need drums and stuff, but this is kind of the starting point. So hopefully this was a helpful tutorial. I can't imagine many people wanting to watch this one, but let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in part 2.